The meeting of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Garcia has asked to be excused. Director Herndon.
Present.
Director Leonard.
Present.
Director Zambor.
Present.
Chair Jackson.
Present.
We have 4 committee members present.
The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so, and asks those who do not wish to participate, please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being conducted from the Central Service Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is also being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website and on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799. E introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it to the board clerk, Dr. Mann. Virtual speakers are asked to remain on the platform until you're called upon. After speaking, virtual speakers may follow the rest of the meeting using the broadcast information agenda item mentioned. When you're called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a chance to speak, the chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201/2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, committee members, or administration, are be directed towards the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who engages in such harassing or intimidating words or actions will be immediately asked to cease. If such behavior continues, a recess will be called, and the offending parties will be removed from the meeting. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen from the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the meeting. Also, no one other than the members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on the stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and its committees. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page on the MPS website. Additionally, Madam Secretary, I would like to change the order of the agenda. We have the Food Justice Task Force report first, followed by the receipt of the fiscal year ending in 2022 audit reports. We will proceed with the remainder of the agenda from there.
So noted. The first item on the agenda for tonight is item number 15, which is a report with possible action on the Food Justice Task Force. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will the administration please present the item?
Yes, Chair Jackson and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. In December of 2022, Resolution 2223R-013 on the development of a Food Justice Task Force referred to Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. At the January 2023 board meeting, the board adopted Resolution 2223R-013, directing the administration to have an update brought to the May 2023 AF&P committee meeting. I have Mr. Omar Abdullah, Director of Nutrition Services, with us this evening to provide an update, after which we'll be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Mr. Abdullah.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Posley. Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Omar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. Since the resolution was passed, this is the first update meeting report on the task force. We had 2 meetings with the members of the task force, and one was on March 8, 2023, and the second meeting was on April 12, 2023. In these meetings, we discussed the state of the MPS meal service operations and the challenges it's facing. During the second meeting on April 12, 2023, Department of Nutrition Services staff made a presentation to the members of the Food Justice Task Force, and I'm going to quickly summarize that presentation to the committee. All of our operations are conducted following 5 priorities of success. The next slide is, this is where we shared with the members of the task force and Department of Nutrition Services mission and vision statements, and what we try to deliver and serve to our students. On the next slide, we provided them with the update on conversion to production kitchens. At the end of last school year, we had 21 schools that were converted from a pre-pack meals school to a production kitchen school. And currently, we have 30 schools that are production kitchens, meaning the food is prepared at the school and served to the students at that school. In addition, we expect to add 10 more schools at each start of the next school year for early start calendar as well as a traditional start calendar. In addition to that, we shared with the members of the task force the actions that we are taking so far to improve the food service operations. The number of choice offering currently in our menus, as well as continued improvements with our chef, of the new recipe development, as well as food taste testing at a number of high schools that we have conducted so far. And based on student feedback, we have already incorporated some of those new recipes in our menus starting April of 2023. And we intend to continue to do that going forward on a monthly basis. And another concern that the students and task force had brought about special dietary needs. We shared with the members of the task force the link that we have on our website, Department of Nutrition Services website, where the students can fill out the form for the special dietary needs and how it is recorded in our system, and we make sure that that is followed when serving meals to those students. In addition to that, we shared with the task force the staffing situation, the number of applicants we had during the current school year, and number that we hired throughout the year. And also, we shared with them our current vacancies for our manager as well as assistant positions in the food service operations. In addition to that, we shared with them the manager trainee program that we have revamped and try to train our managers extensively before they take charge of a kitchen. And lastly, we shared with them this coming school year, we are going to have an administrative review from USDA and DPI, which is every 5 years. So the last review was in 2019. So this would be next school year, we will have another administrative review or audit for our department and our operations. And basically, that concluded the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we had an activity with the members of the task force. We went over the 6 different points that were included as part of the resolution, and we had all the participants vote on based on how important each of those points were to them. And based on the voting, we selected top 2 items for further development of action plan for those 2 points. And I can share with the committee that the 2 points that were selected, one was the staffing situation for our operations, and the second one was the menu offerings. So in fact, after this board item was ready, we had our 3rd meeting last night, and our students as well as the other members of the task force, they have provided the goals, SMART goals, for consideration for developing steps in the process to move forward and implement changes. So we will review those with the administration and prioritize and take action on them. So that's the update, and thank you.
Do the committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Director Leonard?
So first of all, just we're missing one of our members here today. We had a student that really, I just was hoping she would be here to speak. I wanted to show her off. She's done an excellent job. Her capacity as a student way exceeds her age. But anyway, I just had to mention that. I'll call her up and make sure I get her here next time. Thank you. I am pleased to see that the collaborative effort between the task force and our students and the adults is starting to really work. I know there's some sticky points at times, but that's how it works. And I was just really sort of pleased to see how everything was working out. The collaboration is working well. Could you, Omar, could you also just mention that you guys are working collaboratively on a, I want to say, social media campaign, and I'm going to let you speak to that.
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, and members of the committee, Omar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. Yes, that was one of the suggestions the student that Director Leonard mentioned had proposed, that we consider doing a social media campaign to recruit food service staffing. We believe that's a great idea, and we are very excited and open to work with our HR department to put together something and put it out there on the social media.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you.
Director Herndon?
Thank you very much, and thank all the young people that are here tonight on this issue. What I want to bring up is the USDA portion sizes. That has been reported as an issue. I know the portion sizes, the students have been very explicit about the sizes being far too small, especially for like the athletes and that type of thing. It's just not enough food to last them through the day. So how are you going to address that with the USDA, because it's controlled by them, as I understand from prior reports?
Chair Jackson, Director Herndon, members of the committee, Omar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. That is correct, Director Herndon. As far as the USDA guidelines and requirements, I don't think we can change those. However, students do have option to, purchase, a la carte items. We can make those available. However, those would not be reimbursable through USDA funding. Either students pay for it, or there has to be other funding source to pay for that for the students.
Okay, thank you.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we have no request for public testimony on this item. If anybody would like to speak on the nutrition item, the student lunch item, you can come up to the podium and speak, and we'll collect the speaker slip later. At this time, we have no public testimony on this item.
Okay. Director Zambor?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Has the administration considered ways to combine certain positions or work to help food service workers get up to 40 hours a week, or get summer employment just to help fill those vacancies, and provide employment that people can stick with year-round?
Chair Jackson, Director Zambor, members of the committee, Umar Abdullah, Director of School Nutrition Services. As of right now, our employees are able to work during the summer as well. We do send out a survey to our employees asking, if they are interested in working the summer hours. Currently, we are completing our planning for summer food service program, and so far, based on the responses that we got, we don't have enough employees who took the offer. So we are still short. I mean, if anybody wants to work, we have work available, and we are open to providing work for them. It's just our staff have not chosen to work during summer.
Can I follow up?
All right.
So I'm really excited to see that the kitchens are reopening. I know that's been really difficult to get them reopened and to get the equipment and get the staff. It looks like we still have a number of vacancies. I know that Madison increased base wages of their food service workers by $5 in 2022 because they were struggling to compete with healthcare, food service openings. Can you talk a little bit about how this budget might be supporting the staffing needs?
Chair Jackson, Director Zombor, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. That is something we have looked at very strongly. In the budget, if it is passed, an 8% wage increase would be applied to the starting rates, all the rates for food service assistants, managers, everyone in nutrition. We believe that's going to be a significant driver for us. We have also looked at more, when bringing people on, giving credit for other experience in the food service arena to get them higher on the schedule. So we are definitely going to keep an eye on this raise and how it impacts our hiring over the next few months.
Just to see how it compares, so Madison in '22 was $21.44 per hour for their base. What is ours? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Chair Jackson, Director Zombor, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. I believe at the moment it's $15.90. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
We do have individuals who have, we have one individual who has turned in a speaker slip to speak on the nutrition item, and that is Mina Abu. Please come up to the podium, state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
ABUSHAWISH.
Thank you.
Dear whom it may concern, my name is Yasmina Abu Shawish, however I go by Mina Abu. I am writing this testimony as a student from Audubon Technology and Communication Center, and I'm a member of WIT Lit. I am here to talk today about the budget and to inform you about an issue that goes all around Milwaukee Public Schools, but no matter how loud our voices are, you continue to ignore us. School lunches. Everyone hates school lunches. Every school nationwide is supposed to support the nutritious food pyramid we all learned in kindergarten. At the bottom of the pyramid, we have our nutrition grains, and second to last, we have our fruits and vegetables. In second, third, and fourth section of our pyramid, we have poultry, meat, and dairy products, in which the district does not follow accordingly. From myself and hundreds of students' lunches, I observed that not only do we not receive enough meals, but a majority of the food is not even edible. For example, I received a regular mini cheeseburger but could not consume it because, firstly, the bun of the burger was extremely soggy and just too vile to taste, and secondly, the meat of the burger was as hard as a rock, exceptionally frozen. The mini cheeseburger also included a choice of fruit, apple, orange, and a pear. I chose an apple, and that fruit was the only pleasant nutrition there. This mini cheeseburger was just one of the many inedible lunches we have received at school. People have paid millions of dollars from taxes to feed their students well-made school lunches, and all of that money isn't supporting the lunch. Students come home every day complaining to their parents about how they are hungry or they feel sick because of the lunch. Students even go ask their own teachers if they have any snacks available because they are so famished they couldn't eat a decent meal. This is unacceptable. We have as many rights for a decent meal as a college student. We are asking questions: where did the money go, and why did the school not change? As a current MPS student, I urge you to use the $71 to $74 million from the vacant staff and teacher positions to fund better school lunches. Students are watching and appreciating your support, so far not to allow cops back into the MPS. We're asking for one more act of good faith in this budget cycle as our elected representatives. I will now be talking about student opinions. All of this is completely anonymous. Anonymous 1. The food is okay. This is not an insult to our kitchen staff. I believe they are trying their best with what they are given. This meaning the budget, instructions, the ingredients, and the restriction. Depending on the day, the food will sometimes be all right or be outright disgusting. I cannot express how much it is unsettling to see various students not eat because of the food the school lunch is serving. It is expressed by the school and districts that the food is supposed to allow the nutritional plates. However, sometimes nothing in the school's tray seems nutritional and safe to eat. It is discouraging to eat the food sometimes, and that's not what's supposed to happen. Nobody should feel forced to eat something they don't like. Anonymous too. I think the school district gives the food suppliers too much sway in determining what nutritious products to give the students for school lunches. And I think there is too little oversight on what can and cannot be given to kids for school lunches. I think we're paying them the premium for their services, but we are getting the least economically acceptable service. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can clap.
And if I may, Madam Chair, give a comment.
So noted.
For any student that speak, take your time. We're here to listen. It's not a rush. Take your time.
Okay, given that this is an informational item and no action is required, the next item on the agenda
Yes.
would be our audit item. And that it shows on the agenda is item number 10, action on receipt of the fiscal year-end 2022 audit reports. The recommendation is that the board accept the following documents as attached to this item.
Will the Office of Board Governance please present the item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, members of the audience. Annually, the Office of Board Governance presents an annual audit report to the board. We have both our internal audit manager, Paul Geib, with us, and our external audit team from Baker Tilly, who will be presenting the report. Mr. Geib?
Director Jackson, members of the committee, Paul Geib, Audit Manager with the Office of Board Governance Audit Services. Tonight, representatives from Baker Tilly will be here to present the audits. There are 5 audits that they've completed as part of their year-end audit activity. Wendy Unger, the partner, and Michelle Walter, manager, will be providing a slideshow presentation and answering any questions.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you very much. As Paul noted on the screen is our presentation. This highlights various documents that are issued as part of the audit process. On the first page, we've presented a very high-level agenda. We're going to go through the overview of the 2022 audit reports and the opinions that were issued on each of those. We're also going to discuss some of the federal and state compliance findings that were noted in the Uniform Guidance and State Single Audit Report. We're going to share some required communications that we need to have with those charged with governance. Also highlight some internal control items that were noted and recommendations. And then we'll end with a very high-level financial summary. If you do at any point during the presentation have any questions, please feel free to ask. We'll do our best to address those as we go through. So the overview of the 2022 audit, we issue various reports as part of the audit process. As you would expect, the main document is your annual comprehensive financial report. That's your audited financial statements. In addition to that, there's 2 reports that are issued for your retirement plan. So the Milwaukee Board of School Directors Early Retirement Supplement and Benefit Improvement Plan, and then also the Director's Supplemental Early Retirement Plan for teachers. So those 3 documents are issued as audited statements. As I also noted, we issue a reporting and insights document. That's our communication where we share various topics, and we'll talk briefly about that in a few slides. The last document that we issue is our report on federal and state awards. This is a requirement, a compliance requirement over your various programs that the district receives funding through, and we will share some of the content of that report. On the next page, I've highlighted the opinions that were received on the various reports. Very happy to say that on all documents, we have issued clean, unmodified opinions. Those are the highest level of assurance that you can obtain from us as your auditors. Those unmodified opinions mean that the information contained within the audited statements is believed to be materially accurate. All disclosures that are required to be included have been included, and that generally accepted auditing accounting principles have been adhered to. Included, in addition to those unmodified opinions, there's 2 opinions that are included within your federal and state compliance report. We issue an opinion on internal control over financial reporting, and we also issue an opinion related to internal control over compliance. On the report related to internal control over financial reporting, there were 3 material weaknesses noted, and we'll discuss those in a moment. And then also there were 3 significant deficiencies related to internal control over compliance, and we will also speak about those in a moment. On the next page of the slide, this is where we've highlighted the federal and state program compliance findings. To put this in perspective, the district expends $315 million of federal funds, $721 million of state funds. Both of those, both federal and state, require compliance reviews. Those are cycle tested on a 3-year basis based on dollar value risks that are associated with them. For FY22, there were 3 findings that were noted. One is a federal finding, and 2 are state findings. Also, to put in a bit of perspective, in the prior year there were 6 findings. We are now down to the 3. 2 of them are repeat findings. To just touch base on each of those very quickly, the federal finding was related to the Medicare program in which the district, Medicaid, in which the district participates. As part of the review of that program, we are required to look at the IEP ratio that is calculated. There was an inaccurate figure used as part of that calculation, and ultimately may result in an inaccurate allocation of or apportionment of funds to the district. The 2 state findings, again, as noted previously, are repeat findings. One is regarding the special education program through the state. Department of Public Instruction shares a list of individuals that have no valid licenses per their system. And then the district is required to respond to those. The various situations that may exist are either the individual does not have a license at all, or the license that they may have is not appropriate for what they are teaching. So again, that list is supplied. There's roughly 400 individuals that were on that for FY22. Again, not something that's new or different for the district. And again, this is something that is provided by DPI. So this finding will continue to exist as long as those circumstances are within the district. Transportation, again, a repeat finding related to ridership, and the individuals that are being reported for reimbursement are not included on rider lists for the various transportation distances, et cetera. So again, a repeat finding for 22. On the next page, this is where we begin to get into the required communication that we need to have with you. This is part of that reporting and insights report. This is part of the content in there. Under our standards, we are required to communicate various topics in that report. First of all, we highlight our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards, which is to express an opinion on the district's financial statements. We also note that we are required to conduct that audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. We also note in there that we planned and performed the audit to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatements. To provide absolute would require an evaluation of every transaction of the district, and that's just not what this type of financial statement audit entails. The last item under our responsibilities is to express an opinion on compliance with the regulations for the federal and state programs that the district receives funds through. And again, we did that, as I noted earlier in the discussion. On the next page, significant accounting policies. We are required to communicate if there's any changes in accounting policies for the district during the year. The one item that is highlighted here is a governmental accounting standards. Those are the standards that we follow as your auditors. All governmental entities are required to comply with these. The standard that was effective for the district for 2022 was GASB 87. We've been talking about this for many years, and ultimately that changed the way leases are accounting for. But based on the evaluation of the various leases the district has, that was deemed immaterial to the statements and had no impact on the statements that you have before you. Included in that communication, we also are required to highlight the significant estimates that are made and included within the district's financial statements. There's no changes in the estimates that are included. The figures change, but the actual estimates do not. Included in your financial statements, you have various accruals related to self-insurance, accruals for compensated absences, which is your accrued vacation pay, your net OPEB liabilities and pension liability, and also your participation in WRS and ERS are also additional estimates. Those items that I noted that are related to pension plans and also WRS and ERS are all based on actuarial information that is provided to us as your auditors, and we evaluate all of the information related to these estimates for reasonableness as part of our audit process. Also included in that communication are, we are required to communicate any significant audit adjustments that were identified and recorded as part of the audit process. As we've highlighted on this page, there are various entries that were included this year related to the recording of various debt transactions, cash activities, accruals, transfers from one fund to another, pension activity, and also some reporting items as part of the financial statement evaluation process. There were some reporting items that needed to be adjusted for. On the next page, uncorrected misstatements. So these are what are referred to as past adjustments. There were 3 of those. These were items that came up as part of the audit process and review process that management decided not to include within the financial statements. They are evaluated against materiality and are deemed immaterial, but we are required to communicate those to the committee as part of our report. We're also, if our information is contained in other audited financial statements, we are not aware of any other documents. We also had no disagreements with management, received full cooperation from the standpoint of being in agreement with the findings and the related journal entries. And then we're not aware of any other consultations with other auditors. On the last page of this required communication, we talk about difficulties that were encountered as part of the audit process. This is something that we also need to include within our communication. For FY22, there was significant delays in the audit process for numerous reasons, some which were internal, some which were external, which ultimately resulted in a delay in issuing the report and ultimately submitting that report to Department of Public Instruction. The delays surrounded various departures internally. Also, DPI had some significant system changes during the year that staff was required to adjust for. Also, the financial statement process, you brought in an external organization to prepare the statements and just getting up to speed and understanding the nuances of MPS delayed some of the report turnaround time. As part of this, there were additional efforts that were required by Baker Tilly in order to be comfortable issuing our clean, unmodified opinion. The additional efforts surrounded re-auditing, re-ticking and tying, pulling new data, and then ultimately, because of that, did incur some additional billings to the district for that. On the next page, a byproduct of some of that activity resulted in the 3 material weaknesses that were included within your report for FY22. A material weakness in the past, we did have a material weakness last year regarding material journal entries. In addition to material journal entries, as I noted previously, we also found significant differences or material differences in the financial statements from what was expected. So we have included within that material weakness this year communication regarding the financial statement close process, which includes the journal entries, but also the preparation of the financial statements. In addition to changes to the financials, we also had significant changes to the schedule of federal and state awards, which is the compliance document that we use to determine our testing of your federal and state programs. One of the material weaknesses that was also included is a carryover from the prior year, and that is regarding MPSU and related employee receivables that need consideration and evaluation and ultimately collection if deemed appropriate. The last material weakness that was included this year was a significant deficiency last year. The material weakness surrounded contract invoicing and making sure that the invoicing related to the various contracts was appropriate, making sure that the billings were done in accordance with the various contracts, that the rates that were used, the support that was evaluated was appropriate. And again, we heightened that for FY22. The last 3 comments, prior year comments that are still open. These are not material weaknesses, nor are they significant deficiencies, more just internal control best practices relate to construction in progress, IT best practices, and then carry over some pension-related items. Shifting gears then to the last slide of the presentation, this is just some very high-level financial information that is contained within your audited financial statements. We've laid out 3 points here. Not going to read through these, but do want to just highlight the various end results of the activity for the year. When we look at the district's governmental funds, you saw an overall $11.3 million decrease in your fund balance across the district. This decrease has several components to it. It's not all within one fund. Your general fund, which is your day-to-day operating fund, saw a $45.4 million decrease. You had an increase within your construction fund of $31.8 million and an increase in school nutrition services of $2.3 million. The district does have several other funds, but they all had ultimately no fund balance as of the end of the year, as expected. So total fund balance for the governmental funds was $116.9 million. There's components to that. $4.3 million is non-spendable. So these are either receivables that you haven't collected the funds for yet, so you don't have cash in hand, or inventories or prepaid type items where the money is out of the cash of the district, but you haven't recognized the expenses because they are for subsequent years. There's also $64.1 million that is restricted, and that's for various components from self-insurance to debt service. So those are monies that are legally obligated for various reasons. And then $39.1 million was committed for construction, and $5.6 million is assigned for your 2023 budget. So that's the amount you assigned to balance your 2023 budget. And then the remaining balance, which is your working capital contingency type funds, was $3.8 million. Lastly, the last point here, just to highlight the long-term obligations of the district, there's extensive footnotes regarding the long-term obligations of the district that range from your outstanding long-term debt to your various pension liabilities. But just want to note that as of year end, that total long-term obligation was approximately $1 billion and had decreased by approximately $124 million net of additions and deletions during the year. The net decrease is essentially related to $51.8 million of your OPEB liability, so that saw a decrease during '22, and then the net pension liability saw a $52.6 million decrease. So both of those moving downward. Lastly, the long-term obligations, which include $328 million of bonds and notes, and then a $109 million net pension obligation and $580 million of accrued obligations. And again, there are extensive notes that highlight those items within your footnotes. At this point, I do just want to mention the very last page of this handout does include my contact information, Michelle's contact information. The partner that is responsible for the pension plan audits is also included there. We always encourage you to reach out. We're happy to have conversations with any of you throughout the year or answer any questions that you may have, but we'd also be happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Does the administration have anything to add?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, I know more than just the idea. I just want to personally thank Baker Tilly for the support that we had gone through. That was a journey this year, and we worked together and got it done. So just Baker Tilly and the team, thank you.
Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Oh, Director Leonard.
Not even quite sure how to ask the questions, I'll be honest with you. Okay. So I guess my first concern was you mentioned regarding the 400 approximate people who do not have adequate licenses in some way or form. Is there a way to know where that comes from? Are they permit teachers? Are they, where is that coming from?
Director Leonard, Chair Jackson, members of the committee, that information is provided via DPI's licensing site.
Okay.
So that is a report that DPI tracks based on the activity that's entered within the system and within their licensing system. So that is where that information comes from. Now, let me be very clear that although there are 400 individuals included on them, not all of them are individuals that didn't have the appropriate license. It's really DPI system is not always accurate also. There is a portion of them that is in that situation.
I've gone through that as a teacher, I remember. A second question, and I'm not sure if I'm going to ask this correctly or not, but when I was looking, you were talking about the Medicaid IEP ratio. I wanted to ask the question, is that in a negative or the positive? How does that work? You mentioned something regarding the IEP ratio, and you said that it was an unbalance.
There is, so the IEP ratio is based on a numerator and a denominator, as you would expect. And both of those are validated to the number of students that participate in the program. And there's the denominator is a very large number. The numerator is smaller because those are the actual students that participate in the program. That numerator was incorrect. So when we looked at the list of students that should have been included in there, there was a slight difference from what was reported.
Okay, thank you. Oh, one more last thing, sorry. Contract invoicing, just a quick explanation on exactly what that is.
No, they'll turn you on.
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee. The contract invoicing that was done revolved around a lot of testing of various contracts. And the items that caused issues that led to this material weakness is that in review of contracts, various MPS staff were not making sure that hourly rates are charged based on what's in the contract, or that what these hours that the contracted employees actually working are what came through in the invoices. There were other situations where, payments were being made for services that were not listed in the contract, or that payments being made to consultants were based on the amount budgeted for, not based on what was actually worked. So there are several items that were not in accordance with your policy, and so multiple along the way that caused some concern. And so once again, these items will be looked at annually, and hopefully progress is made on that item.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Excuse me, Director Zombor.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Could the auditors provide additional details on the misstatements that were mentioned on page 15 of the Reporting and Insights PDF? It's uncorrected misstatements and corrected misstatements.
So
Please state your name for the listening audience as well.
I'm sorry.
Just so that they'll know who's speaking.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Wendy Unger, partner at Baker Tilly. I will quickly touch base on the three that were past adjustments. Michelle will highlight the other material misstatements. So the three past adjustments were regarding a refund that was received, a receivable that would have been booked, and related revenue for $947,000. It was decided not to record that activity. There was also a decrease in a receivable that was incorrectly valued at $995,000, and then an understatement of unavailable revenue of $2.8 million. So that is just looking at the various activity at year end that needs to be moved from actual revenue to unavailable due to the limit of days that it is outstanding.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Michelle Walter, Senior Manager with Baker Tilly. The items that were mentioned that revolve around the corrected misstatements that are included in the financial statements. As you can imagine, we have a several month-long process where we come across these journal entries, and we work with management to correct them. But some of the items that we encountered this year were related to debt transactions. So some items not being recorded correctly for amounts paid for principal and interest, the allocation of these principal and interest, the city-paid portion of the debt service. There's some nuances with the transactions there. There were some accruals that needed to be corrected. So in some situations, health and dental accruals were made when they shouldn't have been made, and incorrect balances for sick leave. There are some other items where those material journal entries were included. One of the other items related to some cash balances that were corrected as part of the audit process.
Yes, Director Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read through this extensively, and I found it to be upsetting at best. My question is, how are you going to handle this moving forward? Because for staff not to be handling the invoices appropriately cost us money as well, or I would expect it to, if they aren't paid within 30 days or what was contracted for. How would that be handled in the future?
Chair Jackson, Director Herndon, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. The contract and invoicing is a difficulty for the district, as people all across the district are paying for invoices. So invoices can come to schools and to central service staff. So we have used a process of communicating through Thursday updates, providing professional development. Going forward, we're going to see how we can implement processes through our financial system to have, we also implemented a system where people have to sign that they're the signer for signing off on invoices. When they do that each year, we put a statement in there about the process for checking, the three-way match checking. So as they signed off, I'm the proper person to give approval. They were also signing that they would do this three-way match. And we tried that this year, and we still had this finding. So going forward, we'd like to implement something through our financial system. Currently, purchase orders are paid through our financial system, but contracts are actually brought, paper invoices are brought. And we want to have the invoicing go through where they're submitted into our financial system. And then as part of a workflow approval process, people have to confirm that they did this three-way matching before they submit for payment.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry, excuse me.
I'm sorry. It sounds like you're halfway between technology and pen and paper. Would that be a correct assumption? If the invoices are at the schools, is there a procedure for them sending those through in a timely manner? And if they aren't sent in a timely manner, is there some kind of accountability methodology put in place?
Chair Jackson, Director Herndon, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. If they're not submitted in a timely manner, it's difficult to know that since it's across the district and centrally, we wouldn't be aware that an invoice is submitted. But we do have bookkeepers at the schools that help track all these transactions. And the bookkeepers have done a fine job in improving our audits and our school audits too. So they play an important role.
I guess my next question would be, has there been any thought given to, when you talk about putting it into your system, of them being able at the school level to enter those invoices into the system?
Chair Jackson, Director Herndon, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. We're hoping, and we don't know how long this will take to get this implemented, that a vendor would be able to submit the invoice right electronically so that it comes into our system and then just goes through an approval process so that it doesn't go to various places
Schools
or departments, yes.
That sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Yes, Director Herndon. Oh, excuse me. Yep.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. Two questions. The first one's for the representatives from Baker Tilly. You mentioned that there was incurred cost associated with some of the additional effort. I was wondering if you could quote what that amount was.
Approximately $100,000.
My second question then is for the administration. Over recent years, there had been an effort to restore fund balance. The general thinking on a good fund balance is somewhere between 2 and 3 months of general operating costs. This year, in the financial statements, it's reflected that the general fund balance dropped nearly 70% to roughly $20 million. And I wasn't sure what the administration's plan was in out years or in the budget in front of the board for consideration currently to restore that fund balance back to a recommended amount, or on what time frame the administration thought they might review that.
Chair Jackson, Matt Chasen, members of the committee. The fund balance is a reflection of our grant funding that we have received, so much ESSER funding, and we have been spending money that we have not been able to claim at this point. So on grants, well, I wouldn't say all, almost all, I'd say 99.9%, we are reimbursed. So we spend the money first, and then we claim, and they pay us back, right? So we have spent money that we haven't been reimbursed for. So in the ACFR, on page 18, there's an amount called unavailable revenue, and it's about $123 million. There's a footnote as far as our, as far as that number, and it's note 1O, and it talks about that being grant funds, and that note is on page 30 in the ACFR. Grant funds that we have yet to be able to claim and receive.
Thank you for that explanation. Do we have a plan currently then over the next several years to reach any target fund balance amount? I wasn't sure if there was a plan in place or a targeted amount that we're looking to achieve over time.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer, our plan would be to have 3 or 4 months of ability to sustain ourselves, and the immediate goal was to get to 100 million, and I feel like we've succeeded, but it doesn't show.
Director Zomber.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Would the auditors be able to tell us when they begin the audit for the next fiscal year, and when would be a good time for us as a board to ask for an update from the administration on progress made?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, typically how our audit process works is we start our preliminary audit work and planning probably in this time frame, May and June, for the next fiscal year, so the year ending June 30th, 2023. Then we do some work, some internal control work, which you've seen a lot of documentation on. We then do kind of some numbers work on our actual field work in August, and then again in November to issue financial statements by December. So I think it's a fairly fair statement to say that, you know, checking in with management probably around the end of the year, I know that's a busy time, would be a good time. We're also checking with them for updates on the status of things as well.
Is November too early, do you think?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, so by November, we're kind of gearing up financial statements. So we're worked through the numbers, worked through hopefully, you know, financial statements, and are working to develop these reports for next year. So by that point in time in November, we'd like to have a good feel for, you know, are these going to be repeat comments? Are we going to have material adjustments? In November, we kind of are just scratching the surface of the financial statements, so we don't know the status of them and if, you know, there's going to be material changes. But for the other items, I would say that everything should be kind of known by that point.
Okay. Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right. So what is the pleasure of the committee with respects to this item? Director Herndon? Excuse me, Director Zomber.
I'd like to move that the administration bring an update on the audit progress to the November AFP meeting.
Excuse me, yes, Director Herndon. Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Director Zomber, we are also asking, the Office of Board Governance is asking that the committee accept the reports that are presented here tonight. And if I'm
and approve the administration's recommendation.
so noted. just so that the listening audience is aware of what the committee would be voting on. It would be to accept the reports as presented tonight on the 2022 year-end audit, the fiscal year 2022, and direct that the administration bring back a report to the board within the November 2023 board cycle on progress. Director Zomber, is that the, yes, okay.
Is there any other further discussion?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, we heard two dates. We heard November, we heard December. So our request is December, but if it's November, whatever, because we talked about two different dates, 2 different months at least.
Director Zomber.
Well, I said November because we would already scratched the surface by November, so we could get an idea, but I'll leave it up to my colleagues.
December's fine.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the motion on the floor right now is November. And so the administration is asking the motion maker to amend that timeline to December. And if I'm understanding correctly, the motion maker is saying she'd like to stick to the November timeline?
I'll amend to December.
To the December timeline, okay. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the motion before you then is to, that Director Zomber moves to accept the fiscal year end 2022 audit reports as presented in the attachments to this item, and to direct the administration to bring back an update on progress within the December 2023 board cycle. Does that reflect the motion?
Yes, thank you.
Great. And at this time, we have no speakers. Unless there's comments on the motion, I can call the roll. On the motion as read into the record, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, before we continue, we have a number of young people here to speak on the analysis of teacher retention rates. I would like to take that item next, please.
So noted. The next item up for discussion tonight is item number 17, which is a report with possible action on the analysis of teacher retention rates. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required. At this time, the Office of Accountability and Efficiency can give that report if you are, if that is okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chasen?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. So the presentation for you tonight is an output of a collaboration with the administration. There was a dive that was done on vacancy rates throughout the district, and as we unpacked that information, we saw there's an opportunity to look at another staffing phenomena, specifically retention rates. So you're going to see the output of that work here. I'm going to be co-presenting with the Chief Human Resources Officer, Ms. Adrienne Manalini. First, I want to discuss the methods by which we arrive the data that you see attached to this presentation. This considers only school-based teacher positions. It does not consider sort of itinerant or district-wide based. It does not consider permitted teachers. It excludes substitutes and other individuals who might generally fall into a teacher job family. Those include speech pathologists, school counselors, library media specialists. Those are not included in the analysis you see here tonight. It does include board and categorically funded. It only considers traditional and instrumentality charters. And I want to spend a little bit of time discussing how we arrived at the snapshots by which we consider someone retained for the purpose of a retention rate. What we do is we build a snapshot based on all active teaching staff. It's school-based, per the parameters you just heard, based on the third Friday of every school year. And then based on the teachers that are listed in that active pool, we compare that to future years. And those future years are also built on a snapshot of the third Friday. So to the extent that that is a reasonable or unreasonable point in time, that is the method by which we arrive at these snapshots. The other thing that I want to highlight is that for the purpose of considering an employee retained over the period that you see in the data, the individual would have to appear in all continuous and contiguous snapshot periods. So for example, if we had a teacher who was in snapshot in year 1, and that individual did not appear in that school in snapshot 2, they may have been on a leave, they may have moved to a different school, maybe a different position, but they returned to that school or that cost center in year 3, they would not be considered retained, even though they were back in that building. So that has the effect, it can have the effect of depressing a retention rate number, certainly over a long enough period. Lastly, I want to make sure that there's a distinction that we consider here based on this methodology between retention rates and turnover or churn. So for example, if I have an individual who enters and becomes an active teacher the day after third Friday, let's say the following Monday, and that person then leaves before the next third Friday, this analysis does not capture them. So when we talk about turnover being a subset of what happens beneath retention rates, this does not present any findings or any visibility to that. I'm sure Adrian and I will be happy to take a look at that if that's the board's interest, but that does not capture here tonight. The full data set is available as an attachment. We're just going to walk through basically by board district what we see is some of the early retention rates. And you can see when we look at the 1-year retention rate by board district, this is indicative of what we see when we disaggregate any data throughout the district. We see that board districts have variability, and then when you unpack each district, you can see that there's wide variability in the schools too, and that's reflected in the data. Each of the charts that you see here have the same access height. So as we step through, they're all comparative. They all start at 0 and they all end at 90, so you can see what the drop is over time. So here's the 2-year retention rate, and you can see that we've already had nearly 10% drop compared to the figures that you saw earlier. And the 3-year retention rate, you get to see these numbers dip again. And then lastly, the 5-year retention rate, there's a more significant shift. But again, that's from 3 to 5. We did not present the 4-year retention rate here. Now, these values are, I think, probably uncomfortably low for a 5-year retention rate. You can see District 4 just has just about 1/3 of the teachers in their pool in that district that were there 5 years ago. And so to the extent that we can identify hotspots or areas where policy or other interventions to improve retention, we can figure out how to target that here. The analysis also includes by district and the breakout by school, visualizations for each. So you can see by school within each district this type of variation that I was describing. So even though you look at District 5 overall and you see that number, you can see even within District 5 there's a lot that's happening, there's a lot that's of note. I mentioned via the methods some of the limitations associated with this. Where there are declining budgets at school levels, you would predictably see a declining retention rate. The other thing that the analysis does not consider is voluntary or involuntary separations. It does also not consider someone just being going through the regular staff exchange cycle or retiring. Those may be specific personnel transactions that the board has interest in, but I don't think it invalidates the numbers that you see here this evening, because from a probably parent-family experience, you either have the same teachers there year over year or you don't. So I think it's worthy to consider the data at this level, but there's opportunities to unpack this further. I do think that, and I'll let Ms. Manalini address it a little bit too, there's been a lot of emphasis on the speed with which and the number of teachers that we're attempting to bring into the district. And if I was going to analogize this into the count of teachers entering the front door in the building, it has not been highly visible what's happening with teachers leaving the exit of the building. And I think now we can begin to see what that is. And at the rate that this is going currently over time, this becomes an untenable, it's an unsustainable staffing trajectory. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Madalini so she can expand a little bit more on that concept.
Thank you. Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Adrian Madaleni, Chief Human Resources Officer. I think it's important to highlight that recruitment and retention go hand in hand. It's not a matter of just recruiting more teachers, it's about retaining. And in my perception, I believe almost retention is more important. If we retain more of our staff here, that puts less stress on trying to hire more and more every year. My team in talent management does an amazing job of hiring individuals, hire over 1,000 people a year. But it's, again, almost like a boat that has a hole in it, right? And you're trying to get the bucket and get water out, but it keeps going out and is trying to catch up. So I believe it's important that we continue with highlighting and researching the retention aspects, and then what can we do and how we can help the schools at an HR level, central office level, help the schools when it comes to retaining high-quality staff in our buildings, teachers, and otherwise. So I'm very excited to work through this project and, again, address it and have some accountability measures in place to really kind of look and try and work with the schools and see how we can collaborate and try and do some things different to really improve the retention. And I don't know if I want to talk about, next steps. This is great data. It's a lot of data that was pulled, and you can really dive deep. And I think while the data itself is good, I'm hesitant to have us make assumptions just based on the numbers you have in front of you. I think we have to dig some more, and I think those are the next steps that we would like to do in collaboration with accountability and efficiency. We want to do a qualitative review of highlighting some schools. We can kind of pinpoint some schools where we see some high numbers here or low retention rates. We can kind of go back, look at the exit survey data that we have, the interview data, see what the people are saying. Let's go back and see if we can extrapolate something from that. Look at the school climate survey data for those schools. Is there information we can go from get from that, glean from that? And also, we need to conduct some focus groups with administrators as well as staff in schools so we can get some feedback from them. And then at that point, once we gather that information, we can put together a plan of action of how we're going to use this information to inform our practices as we move further. And I didn't know, Mr. Chasen, if you had any other information you'd like to add.
Yeah, I think I'll just highlight something that was on the previous one. Certainly, all of this is exacerbated when we're talking about a teacher shortage in the workforce generally. And I think it becomes even more critical that we highlight how we are doing our retention. Are our strategies effective? How effective are they? Do we need new thinking in this space? And I think that was just one thing that I wanted to highlight here as well. Otherwise, with that, we are happy to take any questions you may have.
Do the committee wish to make any comments or any questions? All right. Director Leonard?
Yes, and I would say I definitely don't want to reach any strong conclusions because there's a lot of other kinds of variables here. So I'm going to ask a few of those questions, and I'm actually very curious as to how kind of responses we get from the audience as well, because I think we're all looking for some answers. The first thing I heard yesterday morning was that the U.S. ballpark average for the loss of educators by September of this year coming up is 300,000 teachers. So when you start looking at, we are not producing that kind of number of teachers in this country. So we have to look at the reality of what we're about to run into. Out of curiosity, do you know what the national average is for retention rates in public schools?
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. I've seen varying reports. Most of them are upwards of, I would say, when I look over, like retention rates being 90% or below. So we're looking at about maybe like 10% plus of turnover rate of individuals. So there's varying aspects, but I would say between 10 to 15 is roughly what I've seen.
And that's per year?
Per year.
Per year, okay. Well, then that would match up with our rates anyway. And then what is our, by any chance, what is our current retirement percentage? Because it used to be 10 years ago we were not as concerned. Now I'm looking at retirement percentages that would most likely, because of ages of people like me, they are most definitely closer to retirement.
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer, you bring up a good point. I don't have the exact numbers on the retirements, but I will say right now we are seeing more retirements than we did last year. I thinking in this year, what I'm seeing is not so much resignations. I'm seeing more retirements of people that have hit that age and are ready to move on to the next phase of their life. I want to say this month in our report, we have roughly about 30 plus more retirements reported than we did May of last year for just this month.
Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I'll just add on to that. When you take a look at the distribution of the age of our teacher workforce, you see something that's referred to as bimodal. So on the younger end of the spectrum, we have a pretty healthy peak, and then it tends to level out. And then when you see the more tenured workforce, those that are close to retirement, we have another peak. And so it really behooves us to make sure that we have a good idea of what we anticipate as the exiting via retirements, given that aging of that portion of the teacher workforce, and make sure we have some things in place to address it.
And then just one other question, or actually more of a comment, I guess. How detailed are exit interviews? I feel like we only see what it says on here when it says retire, personal, other district, et cetera. That's more of a generalized response. But I'm curious if we are looking for more detail in those exit interviews, and if that's even possible.
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Our exit survey is attached to our resignation/retirement form, and there's roughly 3 to 4 questions where they ask, what did you like about working for MPS? Why are you leaving? Is there anything MPS could have done to keep you? And those are roughly the questions we ask. It's open-ended. Again, this is all paper, so we do our best to manually track them in a spreadsheet, but I do want to mention that the team in HR is working on moving into an electronic exit survey that would be submitted to staff for them to complete, and we're hoping that'll be a better way for us to analyze, and maybe we can ask more detailed questions, and then we can report out better on what we're getting in terms of feedback.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Oh, I'm sorry.
No? Okay. Director Zomber?
Chair Jackson, would Well, actually, let me just start off by saying our family, is kind of living this teacher turnover. We know what happens when your school loses a teacher, and then all of the other teachers get pulled to fill it, and just kind of the stress that it causes for students and the educators in the building. And so it's really difficult for school communities. I also know that these retention rates are based on a lot of different things. So compensation, class size, safety, administrative support. And so it would be helpful if we could find a baseline that triggers a deeper, further analysis at the school level to make sure that we're catching avoidable situations where teachers would leave. I don't know what that baseline is, but it'd be really helpful if we could decide what that would be so that we know what the goal is moving forward.
Any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have 4 individuals registered to speak on this item. Would you like to go to public testimony?
Yes.
The first speaker we have is Samuel Beaver. Please step to the podium, state your name, and spell your last name and begin your testimony.
My name is Samuel Beaver. I say B-E-A-V-E-R. I am a graduating student at Milwaukee School of Languages, and as I've progressed throughout the years at MSL, I have witnessed the lack of teachers within classrooms, especially those within the middle school wing at the end of, after COVID and after those online years of school. The lack of committed teachers, those who are supposed to help these students during their most crucial years of developing socially, mentally, and physically, are rather absent from my peers. This can cause delays for helping these students succeed and strive for their educational journeys in future. I understand that there are factors that affect the availability of teachers outside of just difficulty of finding them and, stuff like that. And I just ask for the future and for my peers as I'm leaving the school to please consider and strengthening the efforts of finding quality educators that Black and brown students can connect and relate to, as well prop them up for success. For the sake of success and of our future, thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Zoe Chambers. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony. Zoe.
My name is Zoe. My name is Zoe Chambers. Chambers, Chambers.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Zoe, and I attend Golden Meyer High School. I'm here to speak about this year's budget. The topic I will be speaking on is my teachers' pay. Teachers do so much in and outside of school. When I walk into the room, I need my teacher to have a positive attitude so my peers and I can have a positive day. If my teacher is stressed out from the amount of work and not enough pay, that stress shows up in the classroom, and that's not good for me or my teacher. My teachers are unmotivated because of their low pay. They're also too busy to support me in other areas like supervising extracurricular activities because we're short-staffed, because teachers don't get paid enough. That means there will be little to no opportunities for me and my peers to be a part of. Also, our school community's culture and participation will drastically decline if students see teachers not showing up where we need them. I'm also referring to events taking a hit because we don't have enough staff to make what's necessary happen in our schools. The pay doesn't just affect current teachers, but future teachers. When students begin deciding if they want to become future educators with MPS, know that they will go elsewhere to get paid what they're worth. Increase the pay for current teachers and future teachers because I need my teachers to show up for me every day. I urge you to use a $71 through $74 million budget for increasing my teachers' pay. Students are watching and appreciate your support so far not to allow cops back into MPS. And we are asking for one more ask of faith in this budget cycle as our elected representatives. Thank you.
The next speaker is Paul Maynard. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Hello, I'm Paul Maynard, last name Maynard.
Thank you.
I'm an 11th grader at Audubon High School, and I'm here to talk about how I view the overall positives that increased teacher retention rates that are culturally inclusive bring to the table. The addition of Black and brown teachers into school systems is not only a positive community-altering change, but it's also an opportunity to destroy roots of prejudice and bias within the school systems. Introducing Black and brown individuals who have equal to or more skill in teaching to the table is not only offering an opportunity to those who seek to help students succeed, but also offers job safety. However, it also helps to provide a better chance at financial stability and growth in these teachers' lives, all while doing something that they're passionate about. Luckily, the community wholeheartedly benefits from this change in staffing. Students who may not be culturally understanding or informed will be introduced to culturally inclusive environments, which will inevitably help them learn to be respectful and responsible regarding culture. Plus, building community between an already severely segregationally staffed school system can help repair the damage done by previous racist beliefs and the division we see today in Milwaukee, which is quite large. Although it may not be the biggest leap across the river, it certainly sets a few stones down in order to begin the bridge to happier students, happier teachers, and a thriving MPS. Happier students and happier staff means a better learning environment, and also indicates a healthy learning environment is active and can be grown to higher heights in the future. I would personally love to see the school system I have lived in and learned in my whole life become even more accepting with equal opportunity for teacher retention. I urge you to use the money, the $71 to $74 million budget from the vacant staff and teacher positions to use for better pay and retaining our teachers. Students are watching and appreciate your support so far to take a stance against cops being introduced back into MPS schools. But now we're asking for one more act of good faith in this budget cycle as our elected representatives. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jada Hughes. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Hi, I'm Jada Hughes, Hughes. I'm a junior at Golden Meyer High School, and I'm speaking about the need for teacher retention and teachers that understand and care for students. Throughout my time as a student at Golda, I have seen many teachers who have either left because of the lack of pay or because they have not felt valued due to disrespect and not being supported. With that, there is already a shortage of teachers of color. This is important because if there were more teachers of color, this would give students like me and my peers a sense of community. Just earlier this week, our particular conflict happened with a Black male student and a Caucasian teacher. The student was going through emotional distress, but the Caucasian teacher did not know what he was going through and just felt flustered and victimized herself instead of properly helping him. If teachers of color and non-teachers of color are retained and supported, then it will create an environment that students can thrive. Wisconsin is the home for the worst place for Black and brown people to live in the country. The basic needs students need and should have is not being met. We can show where our priorities are by funding the things students need and want. I urge you to use the $71 to $74 million from the vacant staff and teacher positions to use for better pay and retaining our teachers. Students are watching and appreciate your support so far to take a stance against cops being back into MPS. We're asking for one more act of good faith in this budget cycle as our elected representatives.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that completes the public testimony for tonight,
All right.
for this item.
Is there any further discussion? All right. I'd like to thank you for your comments, and I appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, we are back to the regular order of the agenda. Back to item number 1. Item 1, which is action on monthly personnel matters. Action on classified personnel transactions, action on certificated appointments, action on the leaves of absence, the report on certificated resignations and classified retirements, and the affirmative action report. The recommendation is that the board approve the promotions, appointments, and leaves as listed in the attachment to this item to be effective upon board approval.
Will the administration please present the item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, we're asking for your approval of the monthly personnel and report on items before you. I have Adria Maddalini, Chief Human Resources Officer, here with me this evening, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Committee members, do you have any comments or questions? No? All right. Any members of the public? Any comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right. What's the pleasure of the committee with respect to the item? Excuse me, Director Herndon.
I move that we accept the administration's recommendation.
Mr. Chair, if there's no additional discussion, I can call the roll.
Yeah, please.
So noted. On Director Herndon's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the monthly personnel matters, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 2, which is action on the recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, the salary increases and decreases, and the limited term employment contracts exceeding 60 days. The recommendation is that the board approve the promotions, appointments, and leaves, and the limited term employment contracts as listed in the attachments to this item to be effective upon board approval.
Will the administration please present the item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, we're requesting your approval of this item as it outlines this month's administrative appointments, promotions, reclassifications, salary adjustments, and LTE contracts. Adria Maddalini is here with me, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Does the committee wish to make any comments or ask any questions? All right. Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
What is the pleasure of this committee with respect to this item? Director Leonard.
I move that we accept the recommendation from administration.
Is there any further discussion? All right. Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Leonard's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the recommended administrative appointments, promotions, reassignments, and reclassifications, salary increases and decreases, and the LTE contracts exceeding 60 days. On the motion as read, Director Herndon? Aye. Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zombor?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item.
The next item is item 3, which is action on a request to approve the second amendment to the lease agreement with the Milwaukee Excellence Charter School for the property located at 4950 North 24th Street. The recommendation is that the board approve the second amendment to the lease as outlined in the attachment to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval of the item before you as it pertains to the lease agreement for Milwaukee Excellence Charter. I have with me Mr. Sean Kane, Director of Facilities and Maintenance Services, and between the two of us, along with the City Attorney's Office, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item.
Does committee members have any questions or make any comments? Director yes, Director Leonard. Excuse me, Director Herndon. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. You'll get used to it. The question I have is about the square footage. As I take it, this part of the school is moving back. Is that correct? They're moving back into the original location.
Chair Jackson, Director Herndon, sorry. Members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. Yes, that is correct, that they're moving back into the McNair facility, and they're going to be occupying both the first and second floors.
Oh, so the building has second floors as well?
Yes.
Director Zambor.
I have a lot of questions. So they're consolidating both are they going to have a new charter contract, or is the the existing charter contract, when they combine, still going to remain intact?
Chair Jackson, Director Zomber, I'm going to turn this over to Bridget Schock to answer.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Bridget Schock, Director of Contracted School Services. This is not a new charter contract. They are just moving their high school from the Happy Hill to McNair to be all in one facility.
Can I ask a follow-up, Ms.? How many pupils are they planning for the next year?
Currently, they have about 400 or 500 students, and so it will remain around 500 students in 6 through 12.
Chair Jackson, for the new board members on the committee, can the can administration explain how the lease rates are determined for the square foot lease rates?
Chair Jackson, Director Zomber, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director, Facilities Maintenance Services. Currently, right now, for the square footage, we've obviously went from 40,330 to 53,144. And right now, it's based on $7.28 a square foot. We put $1 in for infrastructure, $1.50 towards capital improvements, and then we have $3.54 for building operation staffs that are pouring the operation of the facility and doing the cleaning. And then we have $1.24 for utilities.
So are the utility and maintenance costs to the district roughly the same if they lease 40,000 square feet versus 50,000 square feet?
Regardless of what the space they utilize, you have to heat the building, so the utilities really won't sway much in the building. It's not like you zone it into compartments.
I can pass to someone else.
Oh, okay, more. Yes, Director Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question because I compared I think it was 3 leases, the original, the first, and the second. And on this last one, strangely, we're absorbing the cost of trash removal. That deviates from the earlier one. Is there an explanation for that we would absorb the cost for that when we didn't in the past?
Well, in the previous lease or amendments that we did have, we always had costs that was part of the utility budget across the entire district that was included as part of that. And recently, any amendments that we've had, we just clarified with that. So it's been absorbed no matter what.
Could you repeat that? It sounds as though, well, it sounded a little mixed up. Are you saying that the district pays a blanket fee or cost for trash removal regardless to how much?
Chair Jackson, Director Herndon, Sean Kane, Senior Director, Facilities and Maintenance Services. Yes, that's correct. We base it on pickups across the district, both for trash and recycling, regardless if it's a non-instrumentality charter school, a charter school, versus a regular MPS school.
Okay.
Yes, Director Zombar.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. So Section 13 of their lease talks about alterations made to the building and says at the end of the expiration of the term, the board may at its discretion direct the lessee to return the premises to the condition prior to occupancy. So it looks like in the termination of the lease, it says that there's going to be a walkthrough that will be done by representatives of the board. My question is, who are those representatives of the board? Who conducts the walkthrough? Will Happy Hill be returned to the original condition? And can board members attend that walkthrough?
Chair Jackson, Director Zomber, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities and Maintenance Services. We typically perform that walkthrough at the original lease agreement. So this is a lease amendment, so we don't do it at the lease amendment when we carry through. So, but we would, for Happy Hill, expect to have the condition of the facility returned back to where it was.
I'm actually looking at the termination of the lease agreement says there would be a walkthrough.
Chair Jackson, Director Zomber, Sean Kane, Senior Director, Facilities and Maintenance Service. My apologies. That, yes, we assess the walkthrough pretty much with the facilities, with our tradespeople, that they walk through, check the facility out, see where we're at with things, and make sure it's put back into the proper condition. But if we need to widen that, I have no problem.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, we're welcome to anyone that want to walk with us. When that happens, we will make Dr. Mann aware of the date that is scheduled, and anyone that wants to walk with us, we'll be more than happy to do so. Just make sure that I have a quorum.
All right. Do we have any members of the public wish to make any comments?
A request for public testimony on this item.
Okay. So what is the pleasure of this committee with respects to this item?
I move that we accept the recommendations on the Second Amendment to the lease agreement from administration.
Would the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Leonard's motion to move approval of the administration's recommendation relative to the Second Amendment to the lease agreement with Milwaukee Excellence Charter School for the property located at 4950 North 24th Street. On the motion as read, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 4, which is action on a request to terminate a lease agreement with Milwaukee Excellence Charter School for Happy Hill School located at 7171 West Brown Deer Road. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached termination of the lease agreement with Milwaukee Excellence for the Happy Hill School site.
Will the administration please present the item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval on the item before you as it pertains to the lease agreement for Happy Hill Charter. I have with me Mr. Sean Kane, Director of Facilities and Maintenance Services, and we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to that item.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or any questions? Director Leonard.
I'm sort of familiar with what was happening with them not needing Happy Hill anymore. It was a very short relationship. Just for clarity, why are they moving back moving everyone back into the McNair building?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Bridget Schock, Director of Contracted School Services. They just did an assessment to look at their enrollment, and it wasn't increasing as they anticipated. They are expecting to keep their enrollment around 500, 550 at maximum. And it gave them the opportunity to build a 6 through 12 program in one building, to utilize staff in a way that would, really make sure they're executing the mission of their charter school.
Thank you.
Is there any questions from the public to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right. What is the pleasure of this committee on this respect, to the respect with this item? Director Zomber? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
I move to approve the administration's recommendation.
Is there any further discussion? All right. Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to terminating a lease with the Milwaukee Excellence Charter School for the Happy Hills School located at 7171 West Brown Deer Road. On the motion as read, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 5, which is action on a request to approve the 5th amendment to the lease agreement with Banner Day Learning Corporation at the 35th Street School property located at 3517 West Cortland Avenue. The recommendation is that the board approve the lease agreement with Banner Prep as outlined in the attachment to this item.
Will the administration please present the item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval on the item before you as it pertains to the lease agreement for Banner Day Learning Corporation. And have the team here with me, and between the three of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Do the committee members have any comments or questions? All right. Do any members of the public wish to have any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Okay. What is the pleasure of this committee with respects to this item? Director Herndon.
I move that we accept the recommendation of administration on this item.
Is there any further discussion? All right. Excuse me, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Herndon's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the lease agreement with Banner Day Learning Corp. at 35th Street School located at 3517 West Cortland Avenue. On the motion as read, Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 6, which is action on a request to approve the First Amendment to the use and maintenance agreement with the Boys and Girls Club at the Rogers Street Academy property located at 2430 West Rogers Street. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached amendment to the lease agreement as attached to this item.
Will the administration please present the item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval on the item before you as it pertains to the maintenance agreement with the Boys and Girls Club at the Rogers Street Academy. I have Mr. Kane here with me, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Do the committee members have any comments or questions? Excuse me, Director Leonard.
I just need a clarification. So when I read this contract, this amendment is to allow us time for further negotiations with that process. Is this correct?
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Sean Kane, Senior Director for Facilities Maintenance Services. We currently have a lease agreement for 99 years. Right now, the way it's set up, this is kind of referring to cleaning, ordinary maintenance, and capital maintenance. And when I say capital maintenance, that has to do with maybe replacing a boiler, roof, building systems that are part of the building. And what we need to do is, when we approach the 20th anniversary, because this was adopted in June of 2024, June of 2004, the 20 years expires in obviously June of 2024. So as part of the lease agreement, we needed to, about a year and a half, within the 18th year, we have to come to terms with Boys and Girls Club that no longer, once the 20th year expires, MPS is no longer responsible for the full capital maintenance replacement in the entire building. So right now, we have to negotiate terms with the Boys and Girls Club's team, working with Jordan Shettle along with, for the city attorney's office to get us in a position so we're able to work with them. It's a formality, but we're just trying to buy time to negotiate those things. Then we come forward with another amendment when we come to terms.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony.
All right, what is the pleasure of this committee in respects to this item?
I move that we accept the recommendations from administration on this item.
Is there any further discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Leonard's motion to approve the administration's recommendation, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zombor?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 7. Action on a request for authorization to enter into a lease agreement with the Milwaukee Youth Arts Center for parking at Golda Meir property located at 1555 North Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached lease agreement with the Milwaukee Youth Arts Center.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval on this item before you as it pertains to a lease agreement with Milwaukee Youth Arts Center, Inc. And I have Sean Kane with me, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or have any questions? Do any members of the public have any comments?
We have no request for public testimony on this item.
What is the pleasure of the committee, of this committee in respects to this item? Director Herndon. Director Zombor. Apologies.
I move to approve the administration's recommendation.
Is there any other further discussion? Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to authorization to enter into a lease agreement with the Milwaukee Youth Arts Center for parking at the Golda Meir property. On the motion is read, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zombor?
Aye.
And Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 8, which is action on a request to approve the third amendment to the lease agreement with the Milwaukee Cycle Collective, Inc. for the use of Merrill Park Fieldhouse. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached lease agreement with the Milwaukee Bicycle Collective, Inc. for the use of the Merrill Park Fieldhouse.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval on the item before you as it pertains to a lease agreement with the Milwaukee Bicycle Collaborative, Inc. And I have Sean Kane with me, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item. Thank you.
Do committee members have any comments or questions? Do any members of the public have any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the committee in regards and respects to this item? Director Herndon.
I move that we accept the recommendation of administration on this item.
Is there any other further discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Herndon's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the third amendment to the lease agreement with Milwaukee Bicycle Collective, Inc. On the motion is read, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zombor?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 9, which is action on the monthly facilities matters, the FMS Awards of change orders, and emergency purchase recommendations. The recommendation is that the board approve the requested change order and emergency purchase as outlined in the attachment to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, we are asking for your approval on this month's Facilities Matters, items related to awards and change orders, and emergency purchases and recommendations. Thank you, and that completes our, thank you.
No problem. Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right, and what is the pleasure of this committee in respects to this item?
I move that we accept the recommendations for that item from administration.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right. Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Leonard's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the monthly facilities matters. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 10, which is action on the receipt. Oh, I'm sorry. We have dispensed with item number 10, and we are now at item number 11, which is action on monthly facilities matters, authorization to make purchases, the report on change orders in excess of $25,000, and the acceptance of the report on revenues and expenses, the monthly expenditure control report, the report on budget transfers, the report on contracts under $50,000 and their cumulative totals, and the report on the monthly grant awards, and the acceptance of donations. The recommendation is that the board, 1, authorize the purchases, and 2, accept the donations as outlined in the attachments to this item with appropriate acknowledgement to be made on behalf of the board.
Will the administration please present the item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval on the monthly finance matters before you. Have Janina Domchek, Director of Procurement and Rich Management Services, is here with me this evening, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? Excuse me, yes, Director Leonard.
Just a little bit of clarification. One was on the west, and I hope I'm looking at the right item. I lost my screen here. So anyway, the West Music purchase, it talks about something in there, I think it's the second paragraph about adding teachers. I just need clarification on what exactly that is.
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Janina Dobchik, Director of Procurement and Risk Management. It's my understanding that as part of Phase 4 of the music expansion program, teachers will be added, and as a result, we will need this purchase order for instruments.
To add. Okay, thank you. Thank you. There was some, that's why I need clarification. Thank you.
Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
Okay. And what is the pleasure of the committee in respects to this item?
I move that we accept the administration's recommendation on this item.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right. Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Leonard's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the monthly finance matters. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 12, which is action on the award of professional services contracts. And the recommendation is that the board authorize the professional services contracts as outlined in the attachments to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval of the professional services contracts before you. Between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? All right. Do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right. What is the pleasure of this committee in respects to this item? Director Herndon.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the recommendation of administration on this item.
Is there any further discussion? Will the Secretary please call the roll?
On Director Herndon's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the award of professional services contracts. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 13, which is action on the award of professional services contracts related to transportation. The recommendation is that the board authorize the professional service contracts as outlined in the attachment to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, this evening we're asking for your approval of the professional services contract related to transportation before you. And between the three of us here this evening, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do the committee members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? All right, do any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right, what is the pleasure of this committee with respects to this item? Director Leonard?
Okay. I move that we accept the recommendation of administration on this item.
All right, is there any further discussion? Will the Secretary please call the roll?
On Director Leonard's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the award of professional services contracts related to transportation. On the motion as read, Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Leonard?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
Chair Jackson?
Aye.
That's 4 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item number 14, which is action on the award of exception to bid contracts. The recommendation is that the board authorize the exception to bid request as set forth in the attachment to this item.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, we're asking for your approval of the monthly exception to bid contracts. Janine Adamchak, the Director of Procurement Services, is here with me, and between the two of us, we're prepared to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Do committee members have any comments or questions to ask? Director Zomber.
I do have a question about one of the exception to bid contracts for the Writing Revolution, Inc. It looks like this contract is for 6 two-hour sessions for $56,000 for 6 two-hour sessions. Is that correct?
Chair Jackson, Director Zomber, members of the committee, Janina Domchik, Director of Procurement and Risk Management. Yes, that is correct. It's a 3-day training seminar.
Do you know how many teachers go through that, roughly? Because I'm just trying to wonder, how many instructors? It looks like it's on Zoom. I mean,
Director Jackson, Director Zomber, there are approximately 75 teachers that are going through it this year.
and then in those Zoom sessions for the workshops, is there one instructor? Do they get any books or materials from it? Is there feedback on their writing?
Director Jackson, Director Zomber, members of the board, participants each receive a book called The Writing Revolution, and with that there's there are actually two sets of trainers that provide the training, the 3-day training for the teachers. And as they are participating in that, there are actually interactive work sessions, and this gives them an opportunity to use the resources to help plan for lessons that they can use in their classrooms.
Okay. And then it looks like this is an exception to bid contract for continuity, so we've used them before.
Chair Jackson, Director Zomber, members of the committee, Janina Domchik, Director of Procurement and Risk Management. Yes, we've been using this vendor for over 3 years.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions for now.
Okay. Anything? Do any members of the public wish to make comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right, what is the pleasure of this committee in respects to this item? Director Leonard?
I recommend that we approve this recommendation from administration.
All right, is there any further discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Leonard's motion to approve the administration's recommendation relative to the award of exception to bid contracts. Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Leonard.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
Chair Jackson.
Aye.
That's 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
As we have dispensed with item number 15, we are now at item number 16, which is an update with possible action on the remote work item. This is an informational request item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Will the administration please present this item?
Chair Jackson and members of the committee, at the February 2023 board meeting, the board requested an update on the remote work plan to be brought back to AF&P committee. And I have here with me Adria Maddaleni, Chief of Human Resources, is going to provide the report, and after which we'll be more than happy to answer any questions they may have. Adria.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Adria Maddaleni, Chief Human Resources Officer. As Dr. Posley mentioned, we're here to provide an update on the progress of our remote work program. As we start off, as always, we are identifying the 5 priorities for success. The remote work conversation is a part of the broader human resources strategy to develop staff and improve culture. First off, I would like to express my appreciation for the board's support on this remote work initiative, as we believe it is a critical strategy in recruiting and retaining staff as we move forward. Now I will provide a brief summary of how the remote program has started. Last November, the district launched a remote work pilot program. The district considered remote work to be a part of a routine and regular work schedule when job duties and responsibilities are carried out in accordance with department and district rules, policies, and procedures from an alternate work site. The pilot focused on 3 areas of finance, human resources, and technology. During the pilot, eligible employees in these areas were able to work remotely up to 3 days per week. The hybrid remote work model was felt to be the best way to provide flexibility to the employees while ensuring no disruption to department and district operations. On February 23rd of this year, the board approved the addition of a remote work provision to the employee handbook, thus moving remote work from the pilot phase to a permanent program offering. The remote work provision in the employee handbook allows non-school-based employee groups outside of finance, human resources, and technology to be considered for remote work. As a result, we have been able to expand the remote work program to other employee groups. Since the handbook provision was adopted, chiefs, in consultation with their leadership, reviewed and analyzed over 300 job titles from areas that did not participate in the pilot. Based upon this analysis, a remote work position eligibility list was developed. In the spirit of making determinations in an objective manner, duties and responsibilities of the position, as well as district and department operations and need, were considered. Updates were made to the remote work guidance based upon the feedback we received previously. Specifically, we updated the guidance document to include information on how to appeal a denial of a remote work request. Also, we updated the agreement form to include a space where job responsibilities and tasks to be completed while working remotely can be identified. We felt that it is important to make sure there is a common understanding between the supervisor and employee regarding the expectations of the employee while working remotely. To increase employee accessibility and clarity of the program, a remote work program webpage was created. The webpage will house all relevant information regarding remote work. Specifically, the webpage has a copy of the employee handbook, remote work provision, the remote work guidance document, the position eligibility list, the agreement form or the request form, and the webpage will also house resources that will support employees working remotely and supervisors that are supervising staff that are working remotely. In addition to creating the webpage, we have created a remote work statement that is included in job postings for remote work eligible positions. We believe this is an important step as we move forward in recruiting remote work eligible positions. By including language regarding hybrid remote work schedules, we hope to entice more individuals to apply. We have started developing and identifying resources to help support employees working remotely. One currently we have up on the website is regarding maximizing productivity while working remotely. We're working closely with others in creating some other flyers and informational documents that will support supervisors as well as employees that are starting this journey of working remotely. We want to make sure that when employees start this journey of remote work, they feel supported and understand what the expectations are and how they can still continue to be productive and be a asset to the team and not have to worry about some negative inferences or connotations from working remotely. We have also worked with organizational development to try and develop some professional development videos regarding remote work. Specifically, we're looking at videos that can provide guidance on, making sure your workspace is suitable for remote work, other things of that nature, how to supervise someone who's working remotely. Also, trying to provide videos that help employees learn how to maximize the tools that we currently have in place technology-wise. For instance, maximizing Google Meets. We're looking at Microsoft Teams, PeopleSoft, things of that nature. We feel providing support on how to work those tools will help the employee be more effective and efficient as they work remotely. Lastly, we are working with the Wisconsin Center for Education Research to finalize a survey for employees and supervisors participating in the remote work program. We look forward to getting formal survey feedback from employees and supervisors as it relates to productivity, work-life balance, and connectiveness while working in a hybrid remote work model. And with that, the presentation is concluded and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? Director Leonard.
So I have a few. I guess first of all, how many people are right now in our program, and this is just the first year of this, correct?
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Adrian Maddaleni, Chief Human Resources Officer. This program was just launched in November, so it's been less than a year. So we started a pilot in November, and then after February, when we implemented the permanent provision, we have worked on expanding it to other groups outside of HR, technology, and finance. Right now, as of today, we have 141 employees that are currently participating in the remote work program.
Okay. And then obviously you're not going to have, I guess one thing I'm requesting is that we are going to get a results of that survey when it's done later on.
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Yes, we'd be happy to share the results of that survey when it's done.
Thank you. And then I guess this is more of a subjective question for you, but how, I don't even know how to ask this question. Let me see. How satisfied, how much do you think this is going to help with retention from just from your professional viewpoint? Let me ask it that way.
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. I do believe it's going to have a positive impact. I currently have a number of staff and human resources that are working remotely, and I can tell you anecdotally, I have talked to them. How's it going? How do you feel? How do you like this remote work engagement? And across the board, they've all said they love it. They appreciate it. They like the flexibility. They feel, one individual, I'm more productive when I'm at home. You know, I'm not bothered. You know, I can get stuff done. So I've gotten that positive feedback. I haven't gotten any negative feedback I've heard personally, but I think it's definitely an important tool because I can tell you, I can't go down the hallway, you know, pretty much a day without someone asking, you know, about, you know, remote work. And when we even interview candidates for positions, one of the questions that we tend to get often when we're talking about central office level positions, they're like, what's your remote work policy? Is that an option? So I think this is definitely a huge benefit for us as we try to remain competitive, not only, you know, with other school districts, but with other employers throughout the city and even other public sector employers. You know, the city, the county, they all offer remote work at some level, and we tend to exchange staff from them regularly at this level. So I feel like it's something that is necessary for us to remain competitive.
What do you think our full capacity might be numbers-wise for that remote program to be implemented? How many employees do you think we could actually put into that program?
Chair Jackson, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. I think we can definitely have the capacity to do more in these areas. I will say, while we've identified, you know, hundreds of employees that are eligible, but like I said, 141 are actually participating. We have a number of staff that, you know, aren't interested. I think we're going to see more and more, and as more new people come on, we're going to have more interest to have it. So I think we actually do have the capacity at the central office level to expand in the areas that we feel are eligible, and we can definitely continue to work with our directors and leaders and educate them on remote work. We have the remote work webpage up there so people get familiar with the concept and realize it's a common part of work now, and you know there shouldn't be any negative connotations to it. How do we appropriately manage people, and we make sure they still feel inclusive and a part of the team if they choose to work remotely?
Thank you.
All right. Yep.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Matt Jason, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. If I was going to separate the 141 that are currently active as those that entered the remote work through the pilot participation and those that have entered through sort of the permanent provision, what does that breakout look like?
Chair Jackson, Mr. Chasen, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Well, I could say when we presented back in February, I think we had a little over 102 participants in the pilot. And so now we're at 141. So we've seen a growing number of individuals. And I can't say all of those were in areas that we just added. There are probably some new hires and new people in HR, technology, and finance that were added. But I know we have identified and added individuals nutrition, research and assessment, recreation has been some new ones. We got the strategic enterprise and initiatives. Individuals in that area as well have been added since the pilot.
One quick follow-up. Thank you, Chair Jackson. If an individual in an area that through the chiefs had been approved went out and completed the form on Monday, what is a reasonable expectation on when they can get a response as to when they might be able to actually participate in the program?
Chair Jackson, Mr. Chase, and Adrian Maddaleni, Chief Human Resources Officer. I can tell from experience when we've seen it, it's been a pretty quick turnaround when we've got the submissions. Our directors and our supervisors have not been sitting on them. I would say within a week, you should be having a decision. And really, once the supervisor signs off, then you scan and upload it to our remote work email. And so then we have record of it. But in any situation, if an employee feels their request is sitting, and wondering what's going on, they always have the ability to reach out to Human Resources, send an email to the remote work email, say, hey, I had something, I haven't received anything, can you assist? And then we can work with that supervisor and see what potentially is the holdup in making that determination.
Director Zomber?
So I watched the February AFP meeting just to get some background on this item, and it sounded like we'd be talking a little bit more about the criteria and other items related to the development of the remote work policy. And I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit more on what those criteria are. Also, I can't find the form anywhere on the website. So I'm like, can you just point to where it is? Because I think if we put it somewhere easier to find, I think there's a lot of ambiguity right now around it because people are maybe getting rejected for it, but they are not able to find the criteria because we did get some communications today regarding this item.
Chair Jackson, Director Zambor, Adrian Maddaleni, Chief Human Resources Officer. The easiest way, one, the remote work webpage is on MConnect. It's not on our public site. So sometimes there might be some confusion there. But if you go on MConnect, and the easiest way is in the search box, if you put remote work, then the remote work page will pop up. And then on that page, you'll see there's a series of documents. There's a remote work program guidance. That's kind of like I would want to call the remote work handbook. And that is a document that explains the purpose, the eligibility, the request process, what's the expectation of the employee and the employer when it comes to performance and communication, what are the expectations, what are the requirements for the alternate workplace, the equipment, supplies and software, provisions, and then it has the agreement form attached. And you'll see, really, there's two criteria sections. You have criteria related to the position, and then you have criteria related to the employee. So you have the position, you the number one thing you look at is, are the duties and responsibilities such that they can be successfully performed and managed in a remote work location with minimal need for face-to-face interaction. We want to make sure that any services to our schools are not negatively impacted in any way. That's the number one thing we've held firm on, is that our schools come first and the services to the schools come first. So we want to ensure that there is no negative impact in that arena. Also, does the position allow for measurable performance? Can we look and we can say, all right, the individual is doing the work they're supposed to do remotely? Will the level of operations that the department provide still be maintained while the employee is working from a remote location? Also, we take into consideration confidentiality. Is there is there a lot of confidential information that the employee must do to complete their work that does not make it suitable to be done at a remote location? Like, for instance, in human resources, we have a lot of personnel documents that cannot leave the office. So we got to ensure that that stuff isn't compromised in any way. And then also, then we get into the eligibility related to the person. Is the person requesting it on a performance improvement plan? Does the person have a suitable arrangement at home where they have computer setup? Do they have the appropriate security with regards to internet, so any confidential information will not be compromised? So those are some of the things that are considered and are outlined in that guidance document. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to add, from our office, we have not heard of any denials. We have not seen any submissions, anything that was brought to us specifically about someone being denied a request. So I'd be happy to investigate that further.
I think the communication said the denial happened today, so that might explain that. And then when do you expect that the survey would be complete?
We are, I'm sorry, Chair Jackson, Director Zambor, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. We are currently finalizing the questions, so I would think we would complete this probably early fall, because I know people, well, no, I would say we could have a report back by the fall. We're going to do the survey. Also, we've asked Wisconsin Center for Education Research to look at 3 other comparable like districts and kind of compare our people's experience of remote work with them. So I think that should be sufficient time for us to have a report back.
Any other comments? You had a comment? Okay. I have a few questions. I want to pass the gavel to Director Leonard.
I got it.
All right. So is there a remote work policy as well?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer, we do not have a board policy on remote work. We have a handbook provision that outlines in a provision in the employee handbook regarding remote work that outlines the steps of it, and then we have the program guidance.
Okay. In regards of just teachers in the future or present, would they, or how would that look, the framework of working remotely? And I only ask, I think, of course, we all know the pandemic, that was pretty much an example of what could be, and what does that look like in the future?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. Currently, the handbook provision in our remote work program is centered on non-school-based positions. That doesn't say, moving forward, things could change, and we could look at that. But our position is our children are in our schools, and they benefit from having, teachers in front of them. We have to provide. So our number one priority is ensuring that our students have the necessary support and staff in front of them. And I don't know, I'll leave it to Dr. Posley.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, one of the things that we still have in place is the idea of when we have to go virtual. We are prepared to go virtual. There's plans in place. We know exactly what to do. And that is on cases. For instance, we just had a situation this academic year over at Grand Tosa Drive where the building was flooded. And so therefore, we had to yield to our virtual schedule for our staff. And with that, the teachers report to the building. However, in this situation, they couldn't report to that particular building. They reported to Milwaukee Vincent High School and provided services for our students. So we have that ready to shift at a moment's notice.
Okay. One more question. So what are the accountability metrics set in place to measure this program?
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. I think one of the things we're going to measure is through the survey, getting responses from our participants of the program is going to be key to measure how this program is working. Because as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are viewing this as a retention strategy. So asking questions of the participants, are you more likely now to stay with the district now that you have the flexibility to work remotely some days? That's going to be critical to see how this program is progressing. Also in the survey asking, is there things we can do differently with the program that would increase your satisfaction? I think that will be a good gauge for us on the success of the program. With regards to accountability measures of individuals that are like working remotely, in the agreement form, we added space where the employee and the supervisor kind of outline, these are the expectations of the tasks that they're going to do while they work remotely. And so they're going to have that common understanding from the get-go, this is what I'm going to be doing. They make sure while I'm at home, this is what I'll do. So there should be no miscommunications there. So we're hoping that'll help with the accountability as we move forward.
Okay. Now, for me, in being proactive, like anything, you'll find people who abuse it. So what are the metrics in place to set that disciplinary actions if you miss however many days, or if you're not on at this, whatever it is, what does that look like? So they know going forward, if I do this, I no longer have access to working remotely.
Chair Jackson, members of the committee, Adrian Madeline, Chief Human Resources Officer. In the program guidance documents, it talks about how remote work can be taken away at any point if there's concerns regarding performance. So we make sure it's clear that if there's concerns, that can be removed. Just like if someone is working in person, if they're not performing their tasks, we can put them on a performance improvement plan. We can go through that measure. If we feel it's more of discipline in that they are not actually like working, they're kind of fraudulently putting in time, we can work with employment relations and go through the misconduct and the normal disciplinary process, have a meeting, provide the evidence to show we have evidence that you are not, doing work, you're actually somewhere else. So those are the measures we have in place like we do for any other employee that works in person if they are not performing the duties as required.
That's all of my questions.
You have the gavel.
Thank you.
Audit.
Are there any members of the public wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, we have no request for public testimony on this item.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this item? Cool. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Mr. Chair, as we have dispensed with item number 17, there are no further items on tonight's agenda.
There being no further business for the committee, this meeting is adjourned.